Okay, guys, we're going to get started. This is Transforming Your Service Experience, Part 2. We're going to be going over building customer relationships through personalization. I am your host today. I will be asking our panels today questions. I am the Product Marketing Manager here at Internet Creations. And okay. Want to welcome our speakers here today. We're glad to have you on. Jenny Dempsey is currently the Customer Experience Manager for Number Barn with over a decade of customer service experience under her belt. From the front line to director level management and everything in between, she's also the co-founder of CustomerServiceLife.com. As a certified health coach and founder of Jenny Dempsey Wellness, she speaks and gives workshops on self-care to customer service agents and leaders. Howard is the Director of Product at Internet Creations. You might recognize Howard from our previous webinars. He is a regular host and expert on many of our webinars, both for service and for product. Before we get started, we want to show you where you can ask questions in GoToWebinar. We will be answering questions throughout the webinar, so feel free to ask throughout. The first question we have for you is, where are you? We are here in sunny Hamilton, New Jersey, and we also have another office in Dallas. Let us know where you are.
And Jenny, you're in Southern California, correct?
Yep, I'm in sunny San Diego.
Oh, San Diego is like, their rule is to have the best weather on the entire planet. So
Pretty
is that
much.
still the case?
Yeah, we pay the sunshine tax. Yeah, so we better have good weather.
So it looks like we have people tuning in from San Francisco, from Nashville. We always seem to have Nashville in the house, which makes my country girl heart happy. We have people calling in from Canada, across the pond over in London, and we have somebody tuning in today from Austin, Texas. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon/morning.
Let's review our agenda for today. Thank you, Stephanie. We are going to go through personalizing customer experiences, tools that give agents flexibility, key performance indicators, KPIs on the other side of the story. I know I'm excited to ask Jenny about this one, and the best practices for building customer relationships. A few years ago, calling in to report an issue sounded like this.
Oh, that's me. Hello, you are caller number 10. Please stay on the line. Your call is important to us.
It was standard, part of the customer experience, and for some companies, it still is. But your customers expect and deserve more. They want to talk to a human, and if they can't, they want other ways to contact you and get a nearly instant reply, and they don't want to repeat their information after already inputting it in a previous screen or chat or phone call. According to the Salesforce State of Connected Customer Report, 84% of customers say the experience a company provides is as important as its products and services. Customer experience and support are now blended. It's not just up to call centers to diagnose and remedy issues, but it's an opportunity for the entire company to deliver great experiences at every interaction. And it's now more important than ever. Technology has led to disruption across nearly every industry. Your customers have more choices and greater freedom to take their businesses elsewhere. Consumers now have the upper hand, and that can be a good thing for companies who are looking to innovate. So how can we upgrade the experiences we're delivering customers, and how can we leverage Salesforce to do it? Today, I will turn to our panelists now to share their definitions on delivering a great service experience and what it means for your organization. Jenny, what's your definition?
Well, for us here at Number Barn, we believe that behind every telephone number, there's a beautiful idea, opportunity, or person. And every meeting we end with, let's help create those meaningful connections today. And for us as a phone number management provider, thinking about meaningful connections being made behind just numbers is really where we start.
That's great. Good point. Howard?
So for me, I have this little note card up in my hexacle, because we don't have cubes or hexagons. But the note that I say is get to the customer before they get to you. And so a lot of it is it's about anticipating needs, but in order to really anticipate, you have to know the customer, their full story. So in order to get to the customer in advance, or to kind of foresee what problems they have, you really have to understand them, which means you have to listen. You can't anticipate until you know the customer and build a great relationship. You don't build a great relationship unless you've had a good personal connection with them. If you're treating them like a robot, they feel treated like a robot, they are not going to align to you, like you, and feel like they can work well with you.
That's great. Thank you. Howard, personalization is one of our key pillars for the Service Experience Suite, and you were one of the key architects for this. Can you briefly go into what personalization means and how it fits into the service experience?
Sure. So one of the things that I've always thought about, we all kind of have those horror stories about call centers being just like people who don't know what they're doing, and they're just like, just it's almost like at the cost of anything human, we've leaned on efficiency. So that meant that how fast can we go? How quickly can we respond? How many cases can we close in an hour? All of these things are somewhat related to KPIs, but what happens is it dehumanizes it. There's even been situations where someone's calling you from another country and there's no way that their name is Frank, but because they're trying to, like, they're just going to give a name that I can relate to as opposed to the name that might be hard for me to pronounce because we're in a different country. That's something where if all of your training is go faster, and all of your training and all of your tools and metrics that are showing up are go faster, if you're not going faster, you're not doing it right. How do you expect people to really connect with the customer and really personalize that experience? So you have to adjust the mindset and have the technology to do that. Now, what does that mean to me? The technology and tools, it used to be really hard to do this. But as we've connected our systems together, we have the availability of data in terms of the historical information. We have the tools to allow you to go faster, except just go fast, open up space for that. So your metrics have to now follow that so that they're not undermining what you can do with your support. And the personalization needs to be something that you look to as the area of improvement, not just how many cases can you close in an hour. So that means personalization is different on every case. It's a different understanding of every situation. So the personalization happens through good coaching of your team.
That's great. And it sounds to me, too, that if companies don't keep this at the top of their mind, then personalization could cost. And that's why it's important to keep these in your pocket. Yeah, great. Okay, so that leads us into why we should personalize. Jenny, can you talk about how your team works on creating the ultimate customer experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, we share that same mission, meaningful connections, and we're seeking to understand what the customer wants. And kind of like Howard said, like personalization is different for every scenario. The way that you'd personalize, an angry customer email is going to be different than the one who's the raving fan. And coaching the agents and the entire team in general, even leaders, through how to handle different types of situations plays into creating that ultimate customer experience, because otherwise you're just going to be flatlining. You're not going to actually be customizing a darn tootin' thing. We also focus a lot on our own internal strengths, individual strengths, as well as team strengths. And we look at what we all bring to the table and we kind of use them like superpowers. So, Strengths Finder is a tool that we use. We have every single person in the company, their strengths are listed out. And we kind of lean on that when we're working in situations and we are aware of other team member strengths. And because we're starting on the inside, it definitely shines through to the external customer experience. We don't have scripts. We have customizable canned replies on our email platform, for tickets and such, but we make it mandatory that you modify those. Every agent gets to showcase their own voice, their own strengths, as well as tailoring it to the actual situation for that customer. Because, at the end of the day, customer service is just people helping people. Like, that's just how we see it. And so it's like, well, what would we want to say to our friends if they were writing in, or our family? And how are we going to just treat people like humans while still getting things resolved and done and enhancing their entire experience across the board?
I think that's great, and I really like that you have a program put in place that really allows people to have their personality shine through, because that's how people connect, right? So,
And,
Right,
and
totally.
I have a question for you on that. When you're thinking about hiring people, does this personalization really fall into assessing talent as well? Like, do you do things specific in that hiring process?
Well, we don't do anything specific, but we look for people that are more of a culture fit than we do knowledge fit, if that makes sense. We always know we can train on the knowledge, but we look for culture fit, and we look to make sure they share the same values. So we tailor a lot of questions around, like, you know, uh, creating connections, and customer service being people helping people, and really making sure that that individual is going to bring some of their strengths to the table, and they're not just here to, you know, crunch numbers and get tickets out.
great, great. So, Howard, I'm going to ask, how do you continue to retain strong relationships with customers in your team?
Sure. So one of the things that we do as part of our onboarding, and it sounds like, Jenny and I are very aligned on this in terms of the kinds of things, is we train
Hmm.
everyone in specific active listening skills. And that's actually something that in my team, in the product team that's doing the customer support issues with our products, we do that active listening all the way through our one-on-ones. We're always having meetings with them. I'm observing calls. I'm giving them some really good feedback. We work on very specific things. And I sort of joke with them. They have this thing, or they know I do this thing all the time where I'll ask the question, what else? And then I shut up for like 10 seconds. I literally count to 10 in my mind slowly, because the more you let the customer talk, the more you hear what they're doing, they're going to give you another detail and nuance to get to that root cause. So there's this whole effort to really say, if I don't understand the issue, and I haven't asked why several times, I haven't really dug into that, I'm not going to be in the right place to personalize because I'll have missed a detail. The what else question is the thing where the uncomfortable silence that people will fill it in, and they usually fill it in with the question you haven't asked yet, or you didn't know how to form the question because you didn't quite understand it, but they know where they are. Your job is to get that out of them so that you can be with them in that place.
Great, great. Jenny, can you talk to me about your Tickled Pink program and how that falls in line
Yeah,
with
definitely. Well, first, I want to touch on what you said, Howard. I love that you're bringing active listening in and really putting a focus on that. And when I heard you talking about that, that's very much a mindfulness type of experience for your agents to really take the time to be fully present and listening to what the customer says. I love that. I think that's really important, and such a great coaching mechanism for the team. With the Tickle Pink program, this is so much fun. So we have a pig is our mascot at Number Barn, hence the name Tickle Pink. So we're kind of goofy, but we wanted a way to kind of celebrate our customers. And so I developed a customer advocacy program, and part of it was Tickle Pink, where if there are brand advocates, or someone shares some great feedback, or we have someone shares a testimonial that's going to be featured on our website, or someone just needs some cheering up, what have you, every single agent can nominate their customer. And there's different tiers. So the customer can then get a postcard. We got that idea kind of from Chewy. We made some fun little postcards for Number Barn, and the agent would then fill out that postcard and mail it to them. But we also have these things called pig packages, which is delightful. And part of our social media campaign is a little stuffed pig. Everyone in the company has one, and when we go on trips or whatever, we all take pictures of the pig around the world. and we share it on our Instagram. And so we wanted to figure out a way to get, customers in on this. And so part of the Tickle Pink program is the agents can nominate the customer for a pig package where they'll receive a shirt, stickers, and a stuffed pig. And so far, we have the pig out in Florida, survived the hurricane. We have a pig going to Switzerland at the end of the month, and one that might be heading to China very soon. And so these are just customers that are just, whether they bought something for $2 from us or they spent more than that, they made an impact. We built a relationship, and now we have a whole system in place for the team to nominate. We share all of the stories with the entire company, not just the support team. Everyone in the company sees these, hears these, and then the pig packages are sent out. And it is a freaking blast. The team gets excited about it. Customers love it and are super surprised. And it's a great way for us to just have a little fun and build relationships.
That program sounds incredible. I know when we talked in our prep, you told us about some very appreciative customers that also did a gratitude song from A to Z. Can you also tell everybody about that as well? Or you
Oh
can hum
gosh,
a few bars, either one.
yeah. So this is at another company, but talking about personalization, having giving the agents the ability to create replies that might be a little out of the box. For example, what the story you're mentioning is a customer wrote in a song of basically sent me a YouTube video of them singing a song of gratitude for something that I did in an email reply. I helped them with something with answering their question, and it was amazing. I was stoked to hear this song, and of course, I sing and play guitar myself, so I'm like, well, heck yeah, I'm replying with a song. And so I did, and I created a YouTube video, I wrote the song, and I sent it to them, and they were just like floored. I mean, how often does that happen where you get a song from your customer service agent? And I've done that for other customers along the way, just like to surprise them, or someone was waiting on hold with another provider. So what I did was I created some custom hold music real quick and sent it to them and said, here, maybe you should put their hold music on mute and listen to mine. And it was just a custom song for them. And it was just super silly. I don't remember this song, but it's just basically a quick like, thank you very much. I'm so glad you wrote in, and just being goofy and singing things or writing poems or sharing photos or memes or what have you. And of course, all within reason. But giving your team permission to do these fun things makes a huge impact and makes for great stories, because that particular story happened a few years ago, and it's still one of the most memorable that I have in my customer service back pocket. So
I love that so much. That's great.
Yes, that's a wonderful way to resonate with customers and the team. That's great. So this leads us into tools that give agents flexibility. There seems to be a lot of tools that empower agents to give this ultimate personalized experience. Can you talk a little bit here? What about what tools you find effective and how you use them? Howard, I'll start with you.
Sure. So, kind of moving forward, when I think about, and Jenny alluded to this earlier, and there's actually a line that runs up around our office, which is a great agent experience is what's the genesis of a great customer experience. And this is kind of going like really super root level. Knowledge-centered service, having a knowledge-based, knowledge-centered service, that whole practice is about the quick access to shared knowledge across the entire organization so that you don't have to wait until you've experienced the same issue time and time again. Absolutely. With that knowledge centered service, it allows us to know what to focus on. That also helps us know, okay, what kinds of responses do we need to see? What kinds of issues are we going to be addressing? Um, Having a quick knowledge base that you can refer to, link to, include, whether it's attachments or links to a knowledge base or just good information to include, makes everyone go a lot faster because they're not searching for stuff all the time. It just quickly shows up. That means the stuff they're supposed to know is instantly accessible. So now they have room to personalize. Also think about all the little ways that you can write stuff out. So for example, our product Email to Case Premium, we have these canned comments that our customers can create. We use them ourselves. It's our own tool. We use it like crazy. But those canned comments are those starting points. And I know Jenny alluded to this earlier, that you're supposed to edit the starting point. The starting point is what gives you the ability to say, oh, I have to include these 3 paragraphs of stuff that I don't want to type all the time because I'll get it wrong. But now it's here. So because this customer mentioned one thing or another, I'm going to listen to that or know their history or include something or take stuff out because it's not relevant because they've already done it. So it becomes a real good fast forward button.
That's great. Yeah, Jenny had mentioned that she uses macros, which is similar to the canned comments. And I'd love to hear from both of you. How do you make sure that when people are, Howard touched on this a little bit, but how do we make sure that the canned comments are not used as a crutch, but more as a template? Jenny, could you field that one for me?
It really just comes down to coaching. And also what, Howard said was, having access to knowledge. And so when the agent feels confident in understanding what's actually going on, understanding how to resolve it, they are more likely to dig into those canned replies or macros or whatever you call them and customize them because they have the tools they're empowered with the tools and the knowledge to do so. So that really, I love that you got down to the root of that because none of this personalization is going to happen if no one knows what they're doing. So, and if no one has access to resources to help them, understand, because there's always so much to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to have the starting point, but you want to just use it as the template, which is important.
Right.
And something that I want to add here, it's an application that I've actually used for a little over 2 decades now because I was that nerd in the 90s. This application called Text Expander. It used to be just for the Mac, but about 3 years ago they brought it to the Windows platform. This is like all the little snippets of text that you don't ever want to type again. So for us, we type the word Salesforce, I don't want to say hundreds of times a day, but so many times a day. And with Text Expander, you just type in, for the way we've set up the snippet is .sf. Well, that's great. But I call them almost like the canned comments in training. So all of my team uses Text Expander to find ways they can be more productive. And then we actually look at their snippets that they've created for themselves. And I'm like, this is going to help other people. You've made this. That's a really good way to help you because it's this phrase that you use all the time. So for example, Service Experience Suite. In our org, you type in .ses and you get Service Experience Suite. It's just a quick way to get through that text. All of that space means you have time to personalize. Whenever someone says to me, I don't have time to personalize, I need to close my cases faster, I say stop. Just get Text Expander. Work with canned comments. You've got the space to work.
That's great. And that kind of leads us into a little bit more of the email to case premium benefits. Can you talk a little bit about those? I know you mentioned the canned comments, but
yeah. So beyond canned comments, which are those starting builder blocks, all of the things like your case routing, where the cases go, assigning certain fields and sources and origins and things like that, the sort of the Salesforce automation that's possible when you use the tool goes way beyond. There's a great feature in email to case premium, and apologies for the shameless marketing here, but it's called forward to case. And this sort of solves the situation where an account executive, someone on your sales team, gets an email from a customer where they need support. Well, in Salesforce, if you forward that email into the support system, it's going to look like it came from the salesperson. So email to case premium actually parses that email and says, hey, that's a forwarded message from a customer. So it reads through all the contents, finds the customer, assigns the case to the customer, so it relates it to the contact. It kind of puts the case in the place that you would have had to manually do. And then it also automatically sends out all of the notifications. It's as if the customer emailed support the right way at the beginning, as opposed to the account executive just saying, oh no, this customer emailed me directly. I'm, on the road. They hit one button to forward it into support, and Salesforce kind of with email to case premium, it kind of reorganizes everything for them. So now the agent, they'll see in the email, oh, this was forwarded in from our sales team. So they can further say, hey, by the way, John forwarded this in. He asked me to help you out, and they can go super duper fast. They don't have to wait for anything.
great. Yeah, it seems like the most important thing with these tools is that it's just helping increase productivity so that it does give the space for people to personalize. I think that's great. Um, so beyond tools, customer service teams use key performance indicators to evaluate their agents' productivity and success, like their first call resolution rate, the average number of calls they handle in 1 hour, and customer surveys. How do you think KPIs impact the quality of the service experience? Howard, I'll start with you.
Sure. There's a long time chart that's like you have like speed, quality, and cost, and you get to pick any two. And they're really, unfortunately, in customer service, it's hard to get all the things right. You need to be really knowledgeable. That's one of those key areas. You also need to make sure that you're being, efficient. You don't want people waiting on hold for 2 hours before they get to talk to someone. And you don't want someone to have to call in 7, 8, 9, 15 times to get a resolution. So it's not that we're saying, hey, these key performance indicators that we, have leaned on for a long time. It's just that it's really easy to look at the standard KPIs and to stop there. To say like, oh, by the way, you should create a relationship with your customer. But when we do your performance review, we're only going to measure how quickly you resolve cases. We're only going to measure your first response time. Like if that's something where the only measurement in a performance review is the numbers, and oh, by the way, you should make relationships with your customers, you're really, really missing.
So it sounds like KPIs are really just only part of the story. Let's get into it a little bit more. Jenny, can you talk to me a little bit about what going into coaching your employees by using the KPIs?
Yeah, sure. Well, so we do the coaching kind of two ways at Number Barn. So we do it individually and then as a team. And so like team wise, we will share like the overall like here's our response time for the last month, like as a team. And we look at like, well, what was going on behind the scenes? Like what stories were the tickets as a collective telling us? Were there issues that week? Was there an outage? Was there something else going on? That a trend or what have you, and we talk about it as a team. So there's like the team coaching element, where everyone's voice is heard, but then there's the one-on-one, and we do a lot of we do conversation reviews, for example. That's our kind of QA system, and we're not looking at the amount of tickets someone did. We're not looking at how fast they responded. What we do look for is more of how did they respond? And going back to our initial mission, basically, is like, how did they connect to the customer in that email? And this this goes through different things, like, whether it's from grammar and spelling, basic stuff, all the way to like, did they document the account correctly? And so we look at these very, very specific measurements of how they, because those all impact the connection with the customer. If you have a ton of spelling issues, no matter what you say, your email is not like going to be received well. And so we look at these very, very specific elements in conversations that our team has individually, and then they're actually rating themselves based on that. And then we go through it as a team, excuse me, as a one-on-one with the manager, and we go like, well, what was going through your minds when you answered this? Like, what do you need support on? What could we do better to provide you with resources? And what strengths were used? We factor that in as well. And so it's not necessarily very, very specific, KPIs that we are measuring. We're looking for the bigger picture. And luckily, at this point at time in Number One, we have the time to do that. I know there are a lot of bigger companies out there where it's like what I'm saying right now seems totally unrealistic, because there's just a lot more volume. We have the ability to do this. Um, and so I know that that's kind of a vague answer, but I hope that paints a little bit of a picture of the coaching and how we kind of coach around the KPIs, but we get really specific as far as things within each conversation that we're having with the customer.
To me, it really sounds like what you're going with. It's kind of like saying, and people in Salesforce, we often look at the dashboards that we can create, and it's like, here's the picture of our data. Look how amazing that is. And what you're looking at is saying, as a team, those dashboard numbers are things that we can all get behind, or it's a shared metric. But then the personalization is a very much, that's all the one-on-one. That's something where, I might be struggling with one particular thing, so you're going to coach me in a way that says, Howard, you really need to learn how to like use less jargon, or you really need to learn how to leave some space for the customer. Is that about
Yeah.
right for you?
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, you summed that up well, Howard.
Great. So the next thing we're going to get into is best practices for personalizing. Let's talk about how we can implement these different practices and add the personal touch with their customer interactions. Jenny, what are some of your best practices?
Honestly, best practices is ask your team what they need to support them as far as knowledge goes. Do they have the resources and tools available to answer the questions? That's going to be number one. Number two is going to be, are you coaching the individual agents as a human and treating them as a human so that they treat the customers like humans? So there's the coaching element there as well. And just going back to, the fact that you're not going to have a stellar customer experience if your employee experience totally stinks. So really starting inwards and going out. Those are going to be the two that I always stick by.
And I'll add one best practice that I really try to get people understanding. Um, this is really my pet peeve, which is why I coach to it all the time. When I call up or I email in or I chat or Twitter or whatever it is that I do to get help on any particular product, in 2019, my assumption is that this company is going to be using some kind of CRM system that has all of that information. My pet peeve is when they don't know it. So I coach my team, tell the customer what you know, go through their history with them. So one of the things that we do in our product is we parse everything out so all the individual replies from the emails just show the core content. So you can easily sort of from the bottom scroll up and review the story of what happened in the case. When did it change status? When did they provide a screenshot? When did they get on a call? When did they see this error? That if they can say to the customer, hey, I'm looking at your case, and last week when we were testing, we did this, this, and this, and now that we've gotten some of this information, I was able to talk to Salesforce about your problem. Here's what they told me. Telling them that story as opposed to saying, okay, what's going on? And then waiting, or even worse, hang on a minute, I'm going to put you on hold while I read the notes, and then after 7 minutes coming back on from hold and say, okay, so here's what I need you to do, and then suggesting something that I've already done. So just don't make the customer repeat themselves.
I think that is a great point. Let's get into a little bit more about building stronger relationships. Jenny, it sounds like at Number Barn, this starts from the top. I know you briefly touched on this. Can you go into that a little more for me?
Yeah, so it starts from the top literally because the owners of the company believe in it, and then it trickles down into everything that everyone else does, from the engineering team, development team, marketing team, what have you. So it's an entire company culture, I guess, that we all want to create strong relationships, and we all do it in different ways. Even the engineers, as they're building tools, they may not be working with the customer, but what they're doing will affect the entire customer relationship. But also, just to be clear that we also stay consistent with our replies. We're staying consistent with what we promise to our customers, whether it's on our website or if it's in an email that we have, and also ultimately resolving issues, because that's why people reach out to customer support. And so we're staying consistent, and those help us to continue to retain these strong relationships because customers can trust us. We take responsibility for issues. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. If we make a mistake, we own up to it. And that right there builds trust, and then at the end retains strong relationships. So we just, like, consistency really is key, and we coach the team in all of these things, but we also see other people do it. So we see the owner of the company making a mistake and calling himself out. And so when he does it, we're like, oh yeah, well, we can too. So there's that element where internally our relationships with each other are very strong and we trust each other. And so we're able to kind of bring that out to our customers and really let that, take center stage with every reply.
I think that's a really interesting point. I really like that it's all throughout the organization. I think that does build a great amount of trust within your organization, then it resonates with your customers.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the points we have here that we think that are great for building strong relationships is we have supporting creativity, allows your agents to take risks with customers, and boundaries, which is knowing when they want to engage and when they just want the answer and go. But then we also have here about listening and getting the facts. Jenny, can you add a little more color to this point?
To the listening and getting the facts?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think Howard really summed that up well earlier about active listening and coaching the team on that. And, seeking first to understand, the 7 habits. So just literally and we don't do phone support at Number Barn. So we have email and chat. And so for us, it's sometimes a matter of asking the right questions to the customer in an email or in a chat in order to get the response for us to actively listen and comprehend what's going on. And so we have to know the right questions to ask the customer, and coaching the team around what to look for, how to ask that question, and then how to ask it based on the what they're picking up as far as the customer's attitude and current state. Angry customers versus not so angry customers. Sometimes the responses might be different, but the question might be exactly the same. And so, yeah, I think Howard really did a good job touching on that earlier. But, boundaries, I'm going to jump to that because that's such a big one. And that goes right back to the same thing of how you reply, just reading the customer's behavior and being able to respond accordingly and respectfully.
Yes.
So I think one thing I want to add to this is it's actually one of the principles of knowledge-centered service, and it's referred to in this sort of way of doing KCS practice as customer context. It's often skipped because that's the part that's like, okay, the customer called us, something's wrong, they need help, and that's the end of context. It's not what were they trying to do? Why were they trying to do it? Because we've seen plenty of instances where a customer calls or emails us and says, I want to try to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm coming in with this error. Except they don't say, I want to try to do X, Y, and Z. They just say, I'm getting this error. And then we're like, well, we've never seen that error. Why would you want to do that? And then you keep digging and digging, and it's like, wait a second. Focus on what their intended outcome was. That's where their relationship's going to be. Because we've had customers who say, oh, I was trying to do this, and I got this error. And we're like, you know what? There's a really easy way to do exactly what you're talking about. Have you tried this? And they're like, oh my God, I have no idea. So we didn't actually fix the error that they were having. We just made that error irrelevant to the problem that they're trying to solve. But that's because you see where they are and you're really inside of what they're trying to do.
Great. Perfect. So the next thing we're going to get into is some key takeaways. Jenny, what are some key takeaways you would give to small and large support teams alike?
Gosh, some key takeaways. So, just really look at customer service as people helping people. I know that's very vague and very generalized, but when we are looking at the KPIs we're going to measure, when we're looking at our team and people that we're hiring and training and knowledge, remembering that there's humans at the end of this, and whether they're on the team or our customers, making every decision based on that. I know, yeah. So that's just something that I really try to do all the time, because robots aren't always going to be the best solution. And then, another key takeaway is really just supporting the agents and making sure their experience at the company is one where they can shine, where they can thrive, and they can be creative and they can be themselves, and their strengths are, worked on, and they have challenges and they can learn and grow, where there's an environment for that, because that will, kind of, that will all just pour over into the full customer experience. But have fun with this stuff too. I know that's also very general, but kind of weaving in some opportunities of fun in this kind of like monotonous replying to issues, where a lot of the times we're answering the same questions and we're dealing with the same types of people all the time, and bugs and angry customers, and it's less about not taking it personally. I really don't like that saying, because I know that we all will take it personally and we can't necessarily change that. But looking at it from this different perspective, where there are opportunities for awesome in every single interaction, and that awesome may be a lesson learned. It may be a lesson learned the hard way, but coaching around that to the team is something that I also want to really kind of push home as far as a takeaway.
Well, I love that positive energy for that. That's wonderful.
I think I'll add one and a half things, and that is build reflection into your coaching. So, and Jenny, you really talked to this a lot. It's something that I never really thought about myself. I've been doing it with my team, but I've never really said it's all about reflecting on what you just did as an area for improvement, and that's what we're looking at, not the metric of first call resolution. But
Mhm.
realistically, if the tools are not supporting personalization, fix them. Make sure that you are using things that give you space, because that's the only way you have time to be creative and still be productive. Again, I don't. We visited Zappos as part of a directors thing last year, and one of the things they talked to was, like they ignore certain KPIs because they want people to say, look, if we need a 6-hour phone call with a customer to try to help them find the right product or to try things or get answers, or they just want to talk, we're good with that. I think it's companies few and far between that would say, hey, you should just have a 6-hour call where you're just talking about things because the customer needed someone to talk to. So a lot of, especially in enterprise software, a lot of those enterprise companies will want some productivity, but the productivity shouldn't be so we can jam more cases down your throat. It should be so we can create a really good relationship with our customer. So don't lean only to productivity. Use productivity to enable personalization.
Great. Thank you both. Everything we talked about today really is only part of the puzzle when it comes to giving customers a great experience. The other three parts, responsiveness, utilization, and feedback, really complete that puzzle, and that's why we wanted to get some information from our thought leaders to further expand on their real life examples for how they focus on personalization and customer service. In 2 weeks, we'll be looking at how support teams can be responsive and not rely on that first in, first out approach when it comes to tackling support tickets. Part 3 of this service experience series is on October 1st. We'll be discussing the third pillar, responsiveness, and what it means to make every customer first priority. We'll be joined by a great panel, so you don't want to miss it. A copy of today's recording will also be made available shortly, so be sure to check your inbox. I would love to open this up for questions, and if anyone has any, our panelists will be happy to answer them.
So I do have a couple questions that came in over across the webinar. So this is a question for, I guess, both of the panelists. You mentioned that a great customer experience starts with a great agent experience. How can my team measure whether my agent experience is good enough?
Mm. I'm just gonna start by saying ask the team. Like you don't know if it's good enough until you ask them. Survey them, ask them questions, have meetings, one-on-ones, whatever it takes. I think that's the best way to get the information, at least from my experience.
I think the other thing I would add is don't 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 get rid of the metrics. Like look at them, but don't coach to them. and let the agents know that those are there, and then say, hey, I want you to create a relationship with the customer. What's getting in your way? And so that's something which we always talk about, like, is there any way you could go faster? Is there any way you could, it, for lack of a better term, we sort of lean to the metrics, and then I hear where their frustrations are, and I say, well, let's ignore that. So, like, I don't get lost in a survey score, or I don't get lost in, the number of cases that they did in any particular week or month. So I think it really becomes just ask the people that you're working with where the problems are.
Great. So another question that we had come in is how can I actually tell if my organization needs to improve our personalization?
I would answer that by saying you do. I don't think there's ever an edge where you're doing too much of this. So the answer is you should just choose to make that an area of focus all the time.
That's a good point. So another question that came in is, what are the panel's thoughts on chatbots? My team wants to start using them, and on one hand, they provide for faster service to customers, but a concern of mine would be that they don't provide a good human experience.
Yeah, with chatbots, I mean, there's some companies that do it right and they get the answers to the questions that the customers need, but there still needs to be a way for them to reach out to a human. It's not just going to leave someone in cyberspace and they are not going to be able to find someone. So figuring out, how do your customers talk and making sure the questions that are being typed in there are in the language of the customer, like, I mean, in the words the customer would actually use, and then having a way that if that doesn't answer their question, for them to still connect with a human is key.
Yeah, to Jenny's last point there needs to be an escape hatch for any time you're in a chatbot. There should be a really quick way to say, like, please give me human. And, whether that's something where you just type in the word human or oh my God or whatever it is, something inside that chatbot should make it easy to get you to straight human service. It's also something where, a good chatbot experience should say, I'm a chatbot. I'm not going to pretend to be a human. I can help you with humans can do really, really easily, and I can just do it faster than them. But anything where you need a human, don't try to make your chatbot become the human. That's just, let the chatbot be a company mascot. Let the chatbot be a pet. Whatever it needs to be that matches the personality of your org, great. But don't pretend like that chatbot's a human, because people see through it and they're frustrated.
That's a really good point, because nothing's worse than like thinking you're talking to a human and then realizing that you're only talking to a robot.
Right.
So one last question. Does anybody have any suggestions on how I can use Salesforce to get better at personalization? And I know that Howard, you mentioned a couple of things, like internet creations product, email to case premium. Maybe you want to touch on that again, or if there's any other ideas that you had.
It's funny because when I think about a canned comment, you can abuse it and not personalize. A canned comment gives you text that's ready to go, except it's really a starting point. So what Salesforce is going to do is create space for personalization, what our tools are going to do, what Email to Case Premium is going to do, is make it so that you, for example, your agents don't have to update as many fields, because when the case comes in, it's already pointed to the right place. It's already got the right status, or maybe it's already got the right product type, or all these different kinds of things that might take extra time. So what Email to Case Premium is really going to do is create space. And that's the space that you fill in great experience. For example, what I mentioned earlier, being able to read through the entire case history with your customer. So that's something where your customer can fill in details that might have been missed from an email, or they might fill in another point that just came up that they just learned or just realized or just tested. So the personalization is something where if the tools aren't making the space for it, that's where I say you got to upgrade the tools to get you there.
So that's the end of our questions. If anybody has any more, we're happy to hang out. But thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar. Really appreciate all the thoughtful questions and all your attentiveness, and looking forward to next, actually it's in 2 weeks, so like in 2 weeks webinar.
All right, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. Bye, guys.